Hello everyone, the Crime Life channel is with you. In this video, you will learn about the case of Elisabeth Fritzl, 1984, Amstetten, Austria. A young girl named Elisabeth Fritzl disappeared without a trace at the age of 18. 24 years later, she appeared out of nowhere. It turned out that the woman spent all this time in the basement of her house and miraculously survived. Josef Fritzl was born in 1935, shortly before the outbreak of World War II. His childhood was not easy. Josef had only a mother who worked from morning to night. Fritzl himself started working at the age of 11. He grew up in Amstetten, Lower Austria. At the age of 20, Josef met 16-year-old Rosemary. They got married a year later. Their family had 7 children, including Elisabeth, who was born on April 6, 1966. Fritzl graduated from a technical college, where he qualified as an electrical engineer. For several years, Josef made a name for himself in the construction business, then founded a company selling technical equipment. Elisabeth Fritzl was called a rebel and the most restless of Fritzl's children. She dropped out of school at 15 and enrolled in a waitress course. In 1983, a 17-year-old girl ran away from home. Since she was underage, the police went looking for her and found Elisabeth and her friend in Vienna. The girls were returned home. For many years, Josef Fritzl built a bunker for his family on the first floor of his house. At that time, many families were building shelters in their backyards, fearing nuclear war, so Fritzl easily obtained permission from the government to build a bunker. The only thing he did not notify the authorities about was that he made additional rooms that were not provided for by the project and hid them behind shelves and doors. Fritzl's house, August 28, 1984, was a day that Elisabeth will never forget. That morning, her father asked her to help him install the door in the bunker. The girl went downstairs and then felt that she was falling into darkness. A few hours later, she woke up in the dark and quickly realized that she had helped her father install the door to her own prison cell. She was only 30 meters away from her family, but due to the fact that Fritzl had soundproofed the rooms in advance, Elisabeth did not have the opportunity to reach her mother and tell her about what had happened. Fritzl also installed a reinforced concrete metal door, which was equipped with a remote control system. A few hours later, Rosemary filed a missing daughter report, unaware that she was only a few meters away from her child. Since Elisabeth was already 18 years old by that time, the police were in no hurry to find her. Fritzl said that that morning he had a big fight with his daughter because of her wild lifestyle, so she threatened him to leave the house. 2 days later, a letter came from Elisabeth in which the girl admitted that she had no choice but to run away, as she was tired of living with her family. Of course, Elisabeth wrote this letter under duress. Later, Josef told the police that his daughter had called him and told him that she had joined a sect and did not want to be searched for. Josef started going down to his bunker at 9 a.m. every day. He told his family that he was developing plans for his company and no one should bother him. Rosemary went down to the basement several times, but with all her desire, she did not notice any doors, since Fritzl carefully hid them behind the shelves. Then he started visiting the basement several times a day. 3 years later, Elisabeth, who by that time was almost always alone in the basement, realized that she was pregnant. She had a glimmer of hope that Fritzl would finally let her out of the bunker and allow her to seek medical help. Instead, he brought books on obstetrics and gynecology, bandages and alcohol. A girl named Kirsten was born in 1988. 2 years later, Elisabeth gave birth to a boy named Stefan. The bathroom and the rooms where Elisabeth and her children lived. The room of about 50 square meters consisted of a toilet, a kitchen, a narrow corridor, and 2 rooms. There were no doors. Kamau living underground under her father's complete control meant that Elisabeth was rapidly losing control of reality. Now she had 2 kids to raise. She made a clear daily routine, began to teach children literacy and mathematics. The girl Lisa was born in August 1992. The baby initially had health problems and cried endlessly. Fearing that they might be heard, Fritzl decided to take the child upstairs at the age of 9 months. He forced Elisabeth to write a note explaining that she had given birth to a daughter, but her sect does not welcome young children, so she is forced to leave the child with her closest relatives, mother and father. Thus, Rosemary and Joseph became Lisa's legal guardians. Elisabeth, Lisa, and Monica. Less than 18 months after Lisa was found near the Fritzls' house, another girl, Monica, appeared on their doorstep. However, this time there was no note. That day, Rosemary received a strange phone call from Elisabeth asking her to take care of the baby. It was later revealed that Joseph had recorded her voice and played it back to his wife over the phone. Alexander. On April 28, 1996, Elisabeth gave birth to twins. Unfortunately, one of the boys died 3 days after birth. His brother Alexander survived but was very weak. And this time, Fritzl managed to pull off an old trick. He again dropped the child on his doorstep with a plaintive letter from Elisabeth. In 2022, Elisabeth gave birth to Felix. Fritzl decided that Rosemary could no longer take care of the children, so the boy was left in the basement with Elisabeth, Kirsten, and Stefan. Each time, Joseph forced Elisabeth to write letters about her life and how she could no longer cope with raising children. Then he would drop them into mailboxes a few kilometers away from home. In 2008, Elisabeth's eldest daughter, 19-year-old Kirsten, fell ill. Joseph was determined to cure the girl with pharmacy over-the-counter medicines. That wasn't enough. Kirsten's condition was getting worse by the hour. Elisabeth realized that her daughter would die if she was not given proper medical care, and soon. In the end, Joseph agreed with Elisabeth and took Kirsten outside, for the first time in 19 years, and called an ambulance. He explained to the doctors that he had found Kirsten on his doorstep with a note from Elisabeth. It said she couldn't pay the medical bills, and Joseph had to step in to help. It was the first time doctors had seen such a patient. The girl's teeth were in terrible condition. She was incredibly pale. She was rushed to the intensive care unit. Police have appealed to the public and the media to find out if anyone knows anything about Elisabeth and her children. The police also began to examine all of Rosemary's correspondence with Elisabeth over the years, including all the letters she received. The officers went to the city from which the letters most often came, Kemeton, where they talked with Manfred Wolfart, a church minister and expert on cults. Wolfart explained that there were no active cults in the area that fit the description, and added that some of the phrases in Elisabeth's letter were not natural, as if dictated. Elisabeth began to beg Joseph to let her visit Kirsten in the hospital. In the end, he agreed, but Stefan and Felix had to stay in the basement. He decided to inform the officers that Elisabeth had finally escaped from her sect and was ready to return with her children. For the first time in 24 years, Elisabeth Fritzl went out on April 26, 2008. The police immediately separated the father and daughter. Over the next 2 hours, Elisabeth recounted the horrifying details of how she spent 24 years locked in a basement. On the same day, the police arrived at Joseph's house. It took them a long time, even with Elisabeth's tips, to get to the bunker. The boys were saved. Soon, the incredible story of a girl locked in a basement with her children for 24 years spread all over the world. The public instantly turned away from Joseph Fritzl. He explained that he was not the beast that the media portrayed him as he allegedly often bought toys for children and flowers for Elisabeth. Joseph also referred to the basement as a bunker rather than a prison. He explained that in this way he was saving his wayward daughter, who would have got involved with bad company anyway. It turned out that Elisabeth believed that all the doors of the bunker were under electric shock, and poisonous gas would fill the room if she tried to open them. It turned out to be another lie by her father. The testimony of Elisabeth and the children was recorded on a tape recorder and played in the courthouse. Some of the jurors felt sick from what they heard. Eventually, 74-year-old Joseph Fritzl was sentenced to life in prison. Elisabeth, the children, and her mother, Rosemary, who had a nervous breakdown, were placed in a closed psychiatric clinic where they had to undergo a long rehabilitation. A few months later, Elisabeth asked Rosemary to be moved away from them, as she was upset by her mother's passivity during her imprisonment. Attorney Christoph Herbst, representing Elisabeth and her family, said, "Fortunately, everything is going very well. They spend their time answering hundreds of emails from all over the world. Felix, Kirsten, and Stefan, who grew up underground with their mother, learned to swim and became friends with their upper sisters and brother. At the moment, it is known that Elisabeth and her children have changed their names and live in one of the cities of Austria. Elisabeth got married, Stefan became a programmer, the rest of the children received higher education and work. In 2021, the film The Girl in the Basement was released based on the story of Elisabeth Fritzl,